declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong. But I shall not have strength to carry out this resolution alone unless you join in it with me, as I now invite you to do. I know that your support will be unfailingly given. God help me to make good my vow, and God bless all of you who are willing to share in it.
Princess Elizabeth met Prince Philip at a family wedding, but she can't really remember that moment. So what the reason that we know so much about it is because her governess, Marion Crawford, talks in great detail about their first meeting at Dartmouth College, where Prince Philip was a naval cadet. And he was very, very good looking, 18 years old, very striking, blonde looking. And he was assigned to look after the two princesses, Elizabeth and Margaret, for the day, for their visit, while their parents went around the college. And so it was quite strange to think of an 18-year-old looking after the princesses, the oldest of whom was 13. But he decided that it would be fun if they jumped the tennis nets. So he took the princesses outside and he jumped the tennis nets for them, and they were very, very impressed. Later he went on board the vessel that the King and Queen had come to Dartmouth in, and he had lunch, and then the following day he went and had tea. So that was the meeting that the princess remembers. Princess Elizabeth had a very, very happy childhood. She was born in 1926 in the centre of London, in Bruton Street, and it was 6 weeks before the general strike, so it was a time of great political turbulence. But there was still great excitement about this new royal baby, and people were really interested in the royal family, although they never thought that she would be, an heir to the throne, because at the time everyone loved the Prince of Wales, who of course was later the Duke of Windsor, who abdicated, but all eyes were on him. But this was a beautiful baby, and she was brought up by a series of nannies and nursemaids, and she had very loving parents, and they basically, in those days, people followed the sporting calendar. So the winters were in hunting country, summers were in Scotland, and the season was in London. And Elizabeth had this idyllic childhood with her parents and horses and dogs, and also her loving grandparents. She came to the throne as Princess Elizabeth in 1952, which was right after the Second World War. So she has seen immense changes in this country, from post-war up to the technical age and the pandemic. There's nothing really that she hasn't seen. I think the reason that the Queen is referred to by some historians as the unlikely Queen is that she wasn't prepared to be Queen. She was married in 1947, and she expected to have a proper, long-ish married life before her father, died. But he died quite suddenly. So she was an unlikely queen. And also she wasn't designated to be queen because her uncle, who became Edward VIII very briefly, abdicated and put Elizabeth directly in the line of succession.
The late King's daughter became England's second Queen Elizabeth. Carefully reared to her responsibilities, she has already captured the affections of Britons during her short reign.
Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip were first introduced to each other when Elizabeth was 8 years old. According to eyewitnesses, it was at the wedding of Princess Marina of Greece and Denmark, who is Philip's cousin, and Prince George, Duke of Kent, who is Elizabeth's uncle. in 1934. It wasn't till Elizabeth was 13 and Philip was 18 that the two met again, and that was when Elizabeth fell in love.
Prince Philip was born on the Greek island of Corfu. His father was in the Greek army, and eventually the family were exiled from Greece and went to live in Paris, where Prince Philip was sent to school. And then his mother, who was mentally very fragile, went into a sanatorium, and it was decided it would be better for Philip to be educated by his cousins in England. So he was sent to school in England and lived with his cousins, the Marchioness of Milford Haven, and then he eventually was sent to Gordonston. But all this made him very independent and very strong, and he never says, he always maintains he didn't have an unhappy childhood. It was probably a very interesting childhood because he travelled from a very, very early age, and also they were a very grand family. They were princes of Greece and Denmark, so they were related to both sides, and they were actually also related to all the houses of Europe. So they had a lot of very influential relations, and when there wasn't any money, their relations paid for them, as was the way it went in those days. Prince Philip fulfilled his military service in the Royal Navy. He was educated at Dartmouth College, and then he left college and went straight into the Navy, and he actually saw action, and he saw the Japanese surrender at the Battle of Matapan.
Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip became secretly engaged in 1946 when Elizabeth was only 21 years old. This was met with controversy as Philip had no financial standing, was foreign-born, and had sisters who married German noblemen with Nazi ties. Prince Philip renounced his Greek and Danish titles and became Duke of Edinburgh.
When her engagement to Lieutenant Philip Mountbatten of the Royal Navy is announced, the heart of the world is thrilled by the prospect of one royal wedding with a genuine aura of romance. A former Greek prince, Philip gave up his Greek citizenship to become a British subject. On the eve of the wedding, the king elevates him to the peerage, and he becomes officially His Royal Highness Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, Earl of Merioneth, and Baron Greenwich. From all over Christendom, gorgeous and regal gifts pour into Buckingham Palace. Among them, lovely crystal pieces, including a delicately chased crystal bowl from the President of the United States. From prince and commoner, tokens of esteem and good wishes by the hundreds are acknowledged individually by Elizabeth, with the simple sincerity of any well-bred young woman who punctiliously observes the amenities despite the tremendous demands upon her time. This picnic hamper from Sister Margaret is covered with alligator skin. The Swiss watchmakers send one of their finest. From Burma and Bombay to Regent Street in London, jewels from governments and family have been showered on the bride.
Well, when Elizabeth and Philip got engaged, they decided that because London was ravaged by war and a lot of the buildings were absolutely rubble, and there was unemployment, there was rationing, it was in a really bad place. The government, or the king, thought, well, let's have a very quiet wedding at St. George's Chapel, Windsor. No pomp, no ceremony, we'll just, be very private. But then the government, surprisingly, said, no, 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 we need to lift the people's spirits. Let's have a beautiful royal wedding that everybody can see. So that is what ended up happening. And it was televised, and eventually the television got to America. So it became a global affair, and it did lift people's spirits in London hugely. To see this beautiful young couple married, no one had seen anything like that for the years of the war.
The princess was now seen in the full splendor of that exquisite pearl-encrusted wedding gown, which has truly been described as something out of a fairy tale. Now the bridesmaids and the two small pages, Prince Michael of Kent and Prince William of Gloucester, whose activities gave added sparkle to a brilliant setting. Princess Margaret herself was a vision of loveliness in her bridesmaid's dress. And so to the last chapter in a day of golden memories, as in the gathering dusk, the royal couple prepare to start on their honeymoon journey. Gathered in the palace forecourt, their Majesties and Princess Margaret joined in saying bon voyage to the bridal couple, pelting them with rose petals as their carriage moved away. A leave-taking in which their Majesties' good wishes were united with those of their people. May the present happiness of our princess and her sailor husband grow ever deeper with the years to come.
I think many people have asked the Queen and asked Prince Philip what is the secret of their relationship, and the Queen has spoken out on a few occasions, and she said patience, sense of humour, and she said famously, of course, that Prince Philip had simply been her rock and her stay over the years, and he'd always been there to support her. Although he never involved himself in constitutional affairs, he was there as a sounding board. He was someone to listen and someone who would be on her side or would give her criticism, which of course nobody else really could.